Dune.
Frank Herbert's iconic Dune novel from 1965 is considered by many to be one of the greatest works in the history of science fiction literature. Now, due to the complex nature of the novel, it's been considered for years to be unfilmable. 1984's David Lynch version, now that's a pretty bad movie. Lynch himself has even distanced himself from it. Now, there was a Sci-Fi Channel series in the year 2000, but that wasn't very successful either. It wasn't until the year 2021 when acclaimed filmmaker Denis Villeneuve was somehow able to capture the essence of the novel in the movie Dune Part 1. This was considered a commercial and critical success, won 6 Academy Awards, and it's considered one of the best films from that year. Now, he stated from the beginning that he intended to shoot the novel in 2 parts. Last year's writers' strike and actors' strike delayed the release of the movie, but finally this past weekend, we were treated to Dune Part 2. Now, I've only read the novel once, but I did love it, and I thought Dune Part 1 was a really great adaptation, and it was an absolute masterpiece of science fiction filmmaking. So I was pretty excited. I was really looking forward to this movie. But, this being 2024, we have to temper our excitement because we have been let down way too many times. So, what do we have here? Does Dune Part 2 live up to the first film and all the hype? Or does it fail to deliver and go down as yet another failed attempt to bring the Dune novel to the cinema? Well, before we answer that, let's grab our fleshlight-looking Dune commemorative popcorn barrel, go into the theater, and talk a little bit about the plot for the movie Dune Part 2.
Let's talk.
So, Dune Part 2 picks up right on the heels of the first movie. And we find the Fremen transporting the body of Jameis home again after he was defeated and killed in combat with Paul Atreides. So after the massacre of House Atreides, Paul, who survived with his mother, he's chosen to go with the Fremen, much to the consternation of his mother Jessica. Now, thinking that both Paul and Jessica were taken by the desert and hopped up on all the violence after destroying the Atreides, House Harkonnen amplifies its attacks on the Fremen, attempting to drive them back into the ground, killing all of them if they can, and harvesting the spice, all for themselves. But Paul is not dead. He unites with Johnny and the Fremen to seek revenge against the conspirators who destroyed his family. Facing a choice between the love of his life and the fate of the universe, he must prevent a terrible future that only he can foresee. So the first thing we got to talk about here is the acting, particularly by our leads, Timothée Chalamet and Zendaya. Now, I like Chalamet. I enjoyed him in the first part, playing the young prince who's, trying to prove himself to become an adult whose world is turned upside down. And I also kind of thought he was pretty well cast as a young Willy Wonka in the Wonka prequel that came out in December. But I didn't know if he could play the version of Paul from later in the book, the young leader coming into his own power with all the pitfalls that come with that. But man, he really delivered. And I was shocked at how commanding a screen presence he had. He definitely made the character his own. Zendaya is interesting because I've never been a big fan of hers. I really didn't like her as MJ in the Spider-Man movies. She's just not an actress who appeals to me, but I'll give her credit. She shines here. She plays the Shanae, the Freeman girl who falls in love with Paul. She attempts to keep him grounded, while forces around him pull him in different directions. But my favorite character in this movie is Austin Butler's Fede Harkonnen. He really owns this role as a cruel and treacherous and cunning foe who is one part psychopath and one part honor-driven warrior. The rest of your main cast is great. David Bautista, Stellan Skarsgård, Josh Brolin, Rebecca Ferguson all put great performances, as we would expect from these veteran performers. The movie is also visually stunning. It's the perfect combination of both practical and special effects. It has a large budget of nearly 200 million, but unlike so many movies in this time period where you don't see the budget on the screen, you definitely see it in this one. Denis Villeneuve is no stranger to visually stunning science fiction movies. Arrival, Blade Runner 2049, and Dune Part 1, they're movies, they're of various qualities, but one thing they all have in common is that they're beautifully shot, and this one here is no different. You may hear the term epic thrown around in regards to this movie, and I'm here to tell you that that word fits, because everything about this movie is epic, from the scale of the production to the special effects, to the directing, to the shooting. And the sandworms, man, you just have to see them on a big screen. Biggest screen possible. It's one of the most iconic and amazing special effects scenes you will ever see.
That was awesome.
Now, if I had to nitpick on this movie, I would say that as you get into the second half of the film, the story becomes a bit more confusing and harder to follow. And also, the climactic final battle scene, without giving spoilers, it's a bit too quick for my taste. I feel like it kind of happened so fast. It would have been better served if it was kind of fleshed out a little bit more. We saw a little bit more of it. But these are very minor complaints in an otherwise amazing cinematic experience. So, visually thrilling and narratively epic, Dune Part 2 continues the adaptation of the beloved science fiction series in spectacular form. The magnitude of the story and the level of artistry here is that rare occasion where you become so immersed in what you're watching you forget the length of the runtime of this movie. It's a rare achievement that the film's 166-minute length feels earned. And while it's not announced yet, you are definitely set up for a sequel. But regardless of that, I feel that Dune Part 1 and Dune Part 2 are going to go down in history as two of the most iconic science fiction films in the history of the genre.
That was amazing!
Well, that's it for me this week. Tune in next week when I'll give you my thoughts on whatever I've seen. In the meantime, click that like button, subscribe, leave a comment, share this video with friends and enemies alike, and as always, thank you for giving me your valuable time, and I'll see you next week. Take care.